Coming to you live from Darshan Studios, it's Zinc Comics Exposition with your host, Brian Payne. That's me. Hey, let's put on a show. I'm joined in the studio by the vibrant velvet voice of my lovely wife, Skywalker. This week we read another comic. Tell us a little about that if you could, Mrs. Payne.
We're reading Buddha by Osamu Tezuka. And this is volume 1 we've started with, which is Kapilavastu. And it begins with what's called a Jataka tale, which is a story about the Buddha's previous life. And these tales, even though they're about the Buddha's previous life, they were compiled after his death. But they're based on folk tales as well as teachings that he gave and teachings that other people made. It's over 500 stories.
Okay, I found that Jataka tales are an important part of Indian folklore and comprise stories about the previous lives of the Buddha in both human and animal form. And this Jataka tale was, I've seen it called many things, but the moon and the rabbit, is that what you know it as?
No, because this is more of the sacrificing self for others. Because isn't the moon and the rabbit about the reflection?
Okay, that could be. You could be right.
That's about what it is a lot of these Jataka tales are like this one, where it's the Buddha's taken the form of an animal and then sacrifices his life either to save people or in this case to feed this old man.
In the tale, tell us the tale briefly, just summarize it if you can.
Well, the book is opening in an interesting way because they're talking about the Brahmins, which are the highest caste in India, and how they were originally the religious leaders, but in time they've become extravagant and corrupt. So the people are looking for a new religious, spiritual leader. And there's this old man who's struggling and walking along, and these animals find him, and some of the animals bring him what they can of food, and the rabbit can't bring him anything. So he gets the fire, and it's almost like a mind transmission. Anyhow, she ends up jumping into the fire and to be fed. And this is being taught by a man whose name I've forgotten, but he's a teacher and he's teaching a crowd, and he's saying, my teacher told this story, and when he told it, he got enlightened, but I haven't gotten enlightened. So that was kind of funny to me.
Right. The guy telling the story was Asita, and his teacher was Gosala. And basically, the man is starving, so a bear goes and gets fish for him. A fox goes and gets berries for him. And the rabbit looks but can't find any food, so it brings wood for a fire. And they build the fire, and he jumps into the fire, self-immolting himself so that he can be food for the rabbit, or for the master, the rabbit, so he can be rabbit. He knows that humans eat rabbits, so he sacrifices himself. And that's basically the tale in that story, the Jataka tale. And you mentioned the caste system, and that's a big part of this book, and especially this first chapter. The caste system in India is divides Hindus based on karma and dharma, and it dates back over 3,000 years. Do you know the four main castes? I got them here, but I can't pronounce them. Brahman.
Yeah, Brahman is one. Then
and they
they
are the intellectual and spiritual leaders. And then there's the KSHATRIYARS, Kishachas.
yeah,
They're the protectors and public servants of society. And then the Vaishvas, the skillful producers. And then the Shudras, the unskilled laborers. And then there's other castes within each caste. And then below them all are the untouchables that are outside of the caste system. And they mention in this the Aryans, who I guess conquered India at one time. But I read some conflicting reports on this, and some argue that that's not the case because Aryans, of course, have the connection to Nazism, and the caste system is kind of racially motivated, but it's also more economically motivated. Am I stating that correctly?
actually, it's both
Right.
because from what I read too was that the Aryans were lighter skinned people who came from the north, and the caste system is pretty much a color skin system too. Because you'll see that the darker, uh, a lot of the people in the dark lower classes are darker skinned and from the southern parts of India.
Okay. Tell us a little bit more about the story then.
Well, it sets up the Jataka tale I'm familiar with, but then it's like he's creating and some other characters because even the teachers, I never heard of those teachers. I don't know if they were just made up or if they were teachers that I'm not familiar with in terms of Hinduism. But he has a character who's a young boy who's supposed to be working, delivering something, a rug or something, and it is stolen. And he's him and his mother are slaves under this man, and the man threatens to sell the boy's mother if he doesn't get the property back. And he goes out to get the property and finds out it belongs to somebody named Tata, who seems to be a gang leader. So, and so it's and then they fight, and this young man does have some powers, but he gets caught, and then he tells him, if you don't give me this property back, they're going to sell my mother. So the Tata says, well, let's get your mother back. And that's so I don't know where Tata comes in with the Buddha story, but it's like creating some probably some maybe somebody will be in through the whole book. I don't know.
Yeah, Tata is a thief and a pariah, and then Chopra, I know, continues in the story because I've read it before. Chopra is the boy who gets the rugs stolen by Tata, and he's trying to get the rugs back from the gang of thieves, and they warmly welcome him with a golden shower. They pee on him, and Chopra picks up a bunch of rocks and throws a bunch of rocks at their cocks and hits them all, and in the nuts, and that impresses the boys. So he becomes part of their gang, kind of, which I thought was kind of cool. Um, but we're gonna be reading this over several. I mean, it's an 8 volume set. We've read one chapter, so we're gonna be biting this off in small morsels. Anything else about this chapter that you have to say, Sky?
Got some really nice art, really nice drawings, and it has a interesting feel to it that I like. It just kind of flows along.
Yeah. I think as we go along, we may start reading larger chunks, but I felt that this first section we had to discuss the caste system in India, which is going to play a large part in the book, and I think is an important thing to discuss, especially at this time. And I also thought we had to talk about the Jakarta tales. And you told me that there might be some of those in there. And as soon as I read that story about the bear, fox, and rabbit, I knew that that had to be one. So, um, anyway, we'll be getting back to Buddha next week with our next episode. But for now, Coming to us from McMurdo Station, Antarctica, friend of the show, Chris Vaisvil. Welcome to the show, Chris. That was a piece that you did entitled Engine. Can you tell us a little about that?
What aspect of it?
Just you do a lot of different music. Sometimes you're a guitar player. First off, what do you consider yourself most? A guitar player? Is that your first instrument? Piano player? Composer?
Guitar player or composer, either of those two things.
Okay. And I noticed you mentioned 12 tet and microtonal. Can you tell us a little about 12 tet and microtonal?
Sure. It may be interesting to realize that back during the Renaissance, having gone through the Middle Ages with the modes inherited from the Greeks used in church music, when secular music started, that there were actually people who considered tunings and built instruments back then, in tunings other than 12 notes, most especially in 19 and 31 notes. The reason for that was that they were trying to look for a compromise between the just intonation, which is the harmonic series, and I'll explain that in a second, and playability really is what it comes down to. Because obviously the more notes you have to handle, the more difficult it is to keep track of what you're doing. So the real reason for this is that there's a cosmic joke that has been played upon us, whereas our ears and the harmonic series is out of adjustment, you could say. And what 12 tet is, 12 equal notes that's so ubiquitous now, is a compromise between the number of notes you can play and having things being not too badly out of tune in some respects. When bands play a power chord, they nowadays they're only using generally 2 or 3 notes that are related closely to each other, very low in harmonic series. And 12 tet works very well for that. But when you start getting into more complex harmonies, 12th starts to fall apart. So, but one thing that 12th is really good for is to change keys in the middle of a piece of music. And another one is the less complexity of having 12 notes. So, so that's kind of it. I'm not sure. Ask me some questions based on that, because they'll give me some idea of how well I explained it.
Okay, you're talking to somebody who quit music because it involved math. So you're going to have to dumb it down to a real level of just briefly. Okay, that's 12 tet. What is microtonal? Is it related or is it the same thing or what?
Well, all tunings are related, of course. Microtonal generally means having more notes to an octave than 12.
Okay, okay,
Though people take that definition and stretch it, there's some music that has, let's say, 7 notes to an octave. Actually, that's pretty popular in a lot of cultures. The Bandu music, as I recall, they use 7 notes per octave, and they actually use harmony and they use polyrhythms, very complex music, using 7 notes per octave, with of course instruments that they make.
okay.
But
And
that
you
would be considered microtonal, even though it has less notes than 12.
Okay. Okay. And you make some instruments of your own, and then you also have all these like crazy electronic gizmos. And like I was saying, you have music that's almost classical,
Yeah.
and then you have like ambient, almost piano type music. You got some really fierce guitar pieces, and then you've got some stuff that's almost industrial dance. Almost, it's almost techno. So I like the fact that you got a wide range in your music, and I'll have a link below the. And I suggest all our listeners check out the music. What I'm playing is what catches my ear and my fancy. It might not be what Chris wanted me to play. It might not be what strikes your fancy. So check out. He's got. I'll have a link to his website and his YouTube channel. Lots of good stuff there. Um, now, we've never met before now, but we've been Facebook friends for a long time. And I don't know exactly how we know each other. I know we have mutual acquaintances. And I don't know if you were part of the Hillcrest crowd back in the day or not. But I know you knew Michael Berry, the late, great Michael Berry. And I think that's our connection from the start. But did you play in like, did you like all of us? Did you have your high school rock and roll band and play out at the parties and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. And Michael was in and out of bands that I was in, and also Frank Miller. There was Mosan Devanapur. We had Grant Gibson was a drummer that first started out. It was Michael, Grant, and myself. We started out in Michael's basement there at that stretch. I forget what that was called there. Um, I knew your brother John fairly well, and uh, we ended up playing at parties, and we played at the high school a couple of times. I mean, honestly, we didn't go the what would be the intelligent route, which is go get jobs, practice a lot, save your money and buy really good equipment. We just thought somehow that we were going. This is not Michael. The rest of us, we just thought somehow that we were going to be just discovered, and our future was laid out in front of us, which was kind of, looking back at it, a rather absurd idea. So, but and since you mentioned all of the different genres that I deal with, uh, that's kind of the privilege of being an amateur. Um, you don't have a fan base with a set of expectations. It's one of the greatest hallmarks, I think, of real true genius is when a musician is able to transition what they're doing, notably, say, David Bowie, and retain their audience, not alienate their audience. Um, I think that's, a mark, one of the marks of having a true talent. And I did have opportunity to see David Bowie live once for his Sound and Vision tour, and I have to say that the man struck me as being a consummate performer. Uh, he was able to uh, maintain attention and uh, provide a very good show. It was one of the best concerts I ever went to.
Sounds good. Who was playing guitar for him that tour?
Oh, that was a treat for me because I got to see Adrian Belew.
Okay, I thought that was the tour with Adrian. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, that
Um,
was awesome.
yeah. Um, it's weird that I think the stretch of road you were referring to was Eastgate Drive,
Yep.
yeah, that's me and Mike used to live on opposite ends of the same street on opposite sides of the street too. And what's odd is I knew Mike when I was young, like sixth grade. Then Grant Gibson, I knew in high school. He went to high school, and I had moved to Matson, so I was in a totally different area, and that included a lot of Mike kept showing up in different groupings. No matter where I was, people would start mentioning Mike Barry, and it would be like, yeah, I've known him since I was a kid. But Mike Barry is a great musician who died way too young. And when I was like in sixth grade, he was studying Bach and Beethoven and would play. He had a baby grand piano, and he's still the purest piano player I've ever known. So we still remember you, Mike. And
Yeah, I can't say that I've played with a better pianist.
yeah, and I've known a lot of great piano players, but they were more jazzers. But Mike just had that touch on the piano. Okay, now of course we're on here talking about your music, but I have to make it all about me. So you and I did this collaboration. You were it's your last record is called Contributions. Is that it?
Correct.
Okay, tell us about Contributions and your idea for the project, and then we'll give a listen to what you and I came up with, or you came up with what I sent you, I should say.
Oh, actually, you get uh, a lot of composition credit because it was built around your phone message. So, short story, I used to have uh, the name escapes me. Oh, a Magic Jack phone number, and I gave it up years ago because the device died, and everyone uses just cell phones. But they never killed the mailbox, so I keep on getting emails with spam um, from the mailbox. So one day the idea just struck me that that would be ideal because it's lo-fi and it has particular characteristic sound to it, it would be ideal to ask a whole bunch of people just to phone in and say whatever. Now, that part of it, while I like having chants in music, um, not everyone, I think, thought it through like you did, or Skywalker did, or some of the other people did, where they actually use it as an opportunity to tell a story of some type, and which made it much easier to go and do something with it musically. When you just have so, uh, I'll just stop there. So the compositional process, once I got your phone message, was to try to reflect in the music aspects of the story that you told. Um, and as it turned out, the part that I find most interesting and arresting for me as being my own audience is where I slowed you down by about 30% and put you on an echo with a very low decay rate. So you keep on repeating, or has the lunatic gone mad? I think there's a little bit more to that phrase. And, you know, I thought that just like made the piece. It just brought out that aspect of the message that you left. And for me, using microtonal tuning, that's in 17 notes per octave, was that's where I just started with my synthesizer, and I got sounds out of it that I liked, that I thought worked. It sounded odd, and that's sort of how I put it together. For me, composing a piece of music is typically an experiment. There's a famous American composer by the name of Charles Ives, and uh, that was pretty much his maxim, was that every piece of music is an experiment, and he wrote some great music. So I think it's good advice.
Sounds good to me. And you write some great music too. And I really like what you did with my phone message. Let's give it a listen, shall we?
The clock has run me around in circles and time has passed between the big and little hand. The hourglass is empty and I, having drank its sands, remain thirsty still. My throat is dry and my chapped lips, blistered and cracking at the seams, speak with a foreign tongue and tell the truth as I know it. But will eternity listen or turn a deaf ear as I sound the alarm, ranting and raving as the lunatic gone mad? Clock has run me around in circles. 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 Clock has run me around. Let me go in my life. Let me around. Let me go in my life. Let me around. Let me go in my life. Let me around. Let me go in my life. Let me around. Let me go in my life. Let me around.
That's me. That was great, Chris. Thanks for allowing me to share that on the program this evening. That's from your new record, Contributions. How many tracks are on that one?
I'm guessing, because I don't know exactly, it's like 16. But one thing that I'd like to mention is that since there's so many people involved in it, it's on there for free. So anyone can download it if they wish and listen to all the tracks.
And that link again will be below in the text below this video. So definitely check that out. And Skywalker, you've worked with my wife a few times. And she, Sky, are you there? Come in,
Yes.
Skywalker. Okay. We wanted to get you back into the conversation. Chris, I've used your music in some of my videos for my artwork. I appreciate that as well. And then you've worked not only with myself, but my lovely wife, Skywalker. So I just wanted you to meet as well and get a chance to speak to one another. What was the first thing you and Chris did, Sky?
Actually, I think it was a poem that you put music to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The piece of music was called Double Tap, and you wrote 21st century nonviolent. I can't remember the word cry.
That's right. Nonviolent. It was a nonviolent protest, but I've
Yeah,
forgotten actually the title.
yeah. So originally, that piece of music, Double Tap, was referring to what the Syrian army was doing to the rebels in Syria, where they would drop one of their barrel bombs into a part of Syria that they did not control. Wait for the white shirts or the white hats, who are the volunteer emergency medics, to show up and start pulling people out of the rubble. Wait about a half hour or so, then come back in a helicopter and drop another barrel on top of them, and basically trying to kill the first responders. Very sweet of them. Uh, and I think that your music really, your poem, excuse me, set to that music, I think works really well, um, because you start talking about oh, from from Iraq to the south side of Chicago, and in all these places where people are being killed and their sons and daughters are being killed and stuff like that, and how we have to rise up against that and become better people. And I think that blended well with the original intention of the composition, because those really intended originally, though I would never have voiced it so directly as I am now, as a protest as to what to the murder of civilians in Syria.
And
Yeah.
where did your poem come from originally, Sky?
Well, it was. I didn't know about the original purpose, so I see how it works, because basically that's what my poem was an anti-violence, anti. It was kind of anti-racism, but I wasn't consciously thinking about that then. It was more the violence. And it was the violence I think I had written. It was about violence that was going on in Africa when I wrote the poem.
Okay. And then you're also on this contributions record. You sent a nice message about basically a postcard of Homer, correct?
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
looking out the window and described what it looked like outside my window.
Yes, and an oasis by the sea.
That's us. Okay, Chris, we're getting towards the end of the program. What have I not asked you that I should have? What answer did I step on that didn't give you enough time to elaborate on? What do you have to tell us that you need to tell us? The floor is yours.
I appreciate you wanting to have me on your show, and both of you, working with both of you has been a great experience. I hope we do so more in the future. And I guess we just need to learn to love and care for each other a lot more to make this world a better place. I fear we're going to go through a rough time with climate change and things like that. Obviously, 2020 was not a year to remember. Um, we may have rougher times, but I do have some faith in the generation like Greta Thunberg. Um, there's some really good young minds out there that I am hoping will be able to go and make a future a lot better than where we've been led. It's time for newer people to take over.
We can definitely only hope, and we can hope for some good music along the way. And until next time, I want everyone to remember, you got to think zinc.